Something shifts in the dynamic that's never shifted before. Something changes that creates outcome neither person expected. Something happens that breaks the pattern that's defined every previous cycle. The avoidant goes no contact. This is familiar. This is their pattern. They withdraw. They create distance. They disappear into defended position. They go silent because closeness triggered their wounds, and silence is how they restore their sense of safety. This has happened before, multiple times throughout the relationship. The avoidant goes no contact and you, historically, predictably, reliably, you pursue. You reach out. You try to restore connection. You bridge the distance they created. You refuse to let the silence become permanent. Your pursuing is what's always followed their withdrawing. Your reaching is what's always followed their distance. Your contact is what's always broken their no contact. The pattern is established. Avoidant withdraws, you pursue. Avoidant goes silent, you reach out. Avoidant creates distance, you close it. The pattern has repeated so many times it feels inevitable. Feels like the only way the dynamic works. Feels like your role in the dance that's been choreographed through repetition. But this time something different happens. This time when the avoidant goes no contact, you don't pursue. You don't reach out. You don't try to restore connection. You don't bridge the distance. You don't break their silence with your contact. This time, you also go no contact. You match their silence with your silence. You meet their withdrawal with your withdrawal. You respond to their distance by maintaining your own distance. Both of you, simultaneously for first time in the relationship's history, are no contact, both silent, both withdrawn, both maintaining distance, neither pursuing, neither reaching out, neither trying to restore connection. The mutual no contact creates outcome that's never occurred before, creates dynamic that breaks every established pattern, creates situation where the impossible happens. The avoidant realizes you're actually gone, not strategically withdrawn. The silence becomes permanent in ways it never became permanent when you were pursuing. The distance becomes real in ways it never became real when you were trying to close it. Understanding what happens when both people go, no contact reveals why your pursuing was preventing the outcome you wanted, why mutual silence creates crisis the avoidant wasn't prepared for, what the impossible outcome teaches both people, and why maintaining your no contact, even when theirs breaks, is essential for your freedom, regardless of what their realization creates. The three ways the dynamic shifts when both people go, no contact, why mutual silence creates outcome that pursuit prevented. When both the avoidant and you maintain no contact simultaneously, the dynamic transforms in specific ways that reveal what you're pursuing was actually preventing from occurring. Shift 1. Your silence eliminates their control. They can't manage the dynamic when you're not participating, creating powerlessness they've never experienced. Throughout the relationship and through every previous withdrawal cycle, they had control. Had it because your pursuing gave it to them. They could withdraw knowing you'd pursue. Could create distance knowing you'd try to close it. Could go silent knowing you'd reach out. Your predictable response to their withdrawal gave them control over the dynamic, gave them ability to manage the relationship through managing their availability, gave them power to create distance while maintaining connection through your refusing to let distance become permanent. Your pursuing was what gave them control, was what made their withdrawal safe, was what allowed them to create space while keeping you accessible. But when you also go no contact, when you match their silence with your silence, you eliminate their control. They can't manage the dynamic when you're not participating in the dynamic. Can't control your response when you're not responding. Can't maintain connection through your pursuing when you're not pursuing. The elimination of control creates powerlessness. They're powerless to restore contact, powerless to manage your behavior, powerless over whether connection continues. The powerlessness is what they've always feared, is their core wound, is being unable to control whether they lose someone. Your pursuing during previous withdrawals prevented the powerlessness. Let them withdraw while maintaining control through your pursuit, proving you weren't actually leaving. But your silence eliminates the control, creates the powerlessness, triggers their core wound in ways your pursuing never triggered it. The shift from having control to having no control is first way mutual silence changes everything. Shift 2. Your silence proves you're actually gone, not strategically withdrawn, destroying their assumption that you're always accessible when they're ready. Every previous time they withdrew, they operated on assumption you're accessible. Maybe you're hurt, maybe you're frustrated, maybe you need time, but fundamentally accessible, available when they're ready to reconnect. Waiting for them to decide they want connection again, this assumption made their withdrawal safe, made it feel temporary, made it feel reversible when they got their internal state managed. Your pursuing during previous withdrawals confirmed this assumption, confirmed you were accessible, confirmed you were waiting, confirmed the distance was temporary because you refused to let it become permanent. But your silence destroys the assumption. Your silence, your complete absence of pursuing, your total lack of reaching out, your permanent maintenance of distance proves you're not accessible, not waiting, not available when they're ready. Your silence is different from previous cycles. Previous cycles had you pursuing during their silence. This cycle has mutual silence. The difference is what makes them realize this isn't strategic withdrawal. This is you actually gone. This is you choosing yourself. This is you making the distance permanent in ways you never made it permanent before. Your silence proves what you're pursuing prevented from being proven. You're not going to chase them, not going to wait indefinitely, not going to remain accessible while they take you for granted. You're gone in ways that previous cycles never made you gone because previous cycles had you pursuing, preventing the goneness from being real. This cycle has no pursuing, has only mutual silence, and mutual silence proves you're actually gone. The proof destroys their safety, destroys their assumption, creates panic they weren't prepared for because previous cycles taught them you'd always pursue, and this cycle is teaching them you won't pursue anymore. Shift 3. Your silence forces them to experience the full weight of loss. Without your pursuing to buffer the pain, the consequences land unfiltered. In previous withdrawal cycles, you pursuing buffered the consequences, buffered them from experiencing the full weight of what their withdrawal cost. They'd withdraw, you'd pursue. Your pursuit meant connection maintained despite withdrawal. Relationship continued despite distance. You remained accessible despite their creating space. The pursuing prevented them from experiencing natural consequence of withdrawal, which is loss of connection. Prevented them from feeling the full weight of what withdrawal creates when there's no one pursuing to prevent the withdrawal from becoming permanent distance. But your silence eliminates the buffer. Your silence lets the consequences land, lets them experience what withdrawal actually creates when you're not pursuing to prevent the creation. Withdrawal creates loss, real loss, loss of connection, loss of relationship, loss of you. Without your pursuing to buffer this loss, they feel it fully. Feel the weight of it. Feel what their patterns actually cost when costs aren't absorbed by your pursuing. The unfiltered experience of consequences is devastating, is them experiencing for first time what withdrawal actually creates, what their patterns actually cost, what taking you for granted actually lost them. The full weight lands because your silence removed the buffer your pursuing was providing. The landing is what creates the crisis, is what makes them realize the magnitude of what's happening, is what shifts them from comfortable, defended position to panicked recognition that patterns have real, permanent consequences when there's no pursuing present to prevent the permanence. Why your previous pursuing was actually preventing the outcome. You wanted the paradox that pursuit prevents change. Understanding why your pursuing during their withdrawals was counterproductive helps you see why mutual silence creates what pursuit never created. Your pursuing confirmed their narrative. Every reach proved they were wanted, validating their pattern of withdrawing without consequences. Every time they withdrew and you pursued, what did your pursuing communicate to them? Communicated. You're wanted. You're desired. You're significant enough that withdrawal doesn't eliminate connection. You matter enough that you'll be pursued despite withdrawing. The communication validated their worth, made them feel important, made them feel like they had power in dynamic. Your pursuing during their withdrawal confirmed their narrative about themselves. Narrative that they're the valuable one, the pursued one, the one who can withdraw and still be wanted. This narrative made withdrawal safe, made it feel like strategy without cost, made them believe they could create distance without experiencing loss, because your pursuing prevented the distance from creating loss. The confirmation your pursuing provided is what made the withdrawal pattern sustainable, made it feel like viable strategy for managing their discomfort with closeness. They could withdraw when triggered. You'd pursue. Connection would be maintained. They'd get the space they needed without losing the relationship they wanted. Your pursuing was what made this pattern work, was what prevented them from experiencing that withdrawal creates loss. Your pursuing confirmed the narrative that they could withdraw without consequences. This confirmation is what prevented change. Change requires experiencing consequences. Your pursuing prevented the consequences, prevented the experience that would have taught them withdrawal isn't sustainable strategy, prevented the pain that would have created motivation to address wounds, rather than just withdraw when wounds are triggered. Your pursuing prevented them from missing you. Your availability meant they never experienced your absence, preventing the realization of what you are. During withdrawal cycles, they'd withdraw. You'd pursue. Your pursuing meant you remained available, remained present through your contact, remained accessible through your reaching out. You never became absent, never became gone, never became missed, because missing requires absence, requires the person being gone enough to feel the void where their presence used to be. But your pursuing prevented the absence. You withdrew physically maybe, but emotionally, you remained present through pursuing, remained available through reaching out. Your pursuing meant they never experienced you being absent enough to miss you, never felt the void, never experienced what life without you actually feels like. The lack of missing prevented realization, prevented them from recognizing what you are, what you provide, what your presence means, what your absence costs. All of this becomes clear through missing, through experiencing the absence. But your pursuing prevented the absence, prevented the missing, prevented the realization that comes through missing. They couldn't realize what they had because they never experienced not having it. Your pursuing kept you present enough that presence seemed guaranteed, seemed like permanent feature they didn't need to appreciate because it was always going to be there. The lack of missing is what prevented change. Change requires realization. Realization requires missing. Missing requires absence. Your pursuing prevented absence, prevented missing, prevented realization, prevented change. Your pursuing taught them withdrawal works, reinforcing the pattern you were trying to eliminate by responding to it in ways that made it sustainable. Every time they withdrew and you pursued, what did they learn? Learned. Withdrawal works, achieves its purpose, creates space they need, and doesn't cost relationship because you pursue to maintain relationship despite withdrawal. The learning reinforced the pattern. Made withdrawal seem like effective strategy, made it seem like viable way to manage their discomfort with closeness without paying cost of losing connection. Your pursuing was teaching them the opposite of what you wanted them to learn. You wanted them to learn withdrawal costs connection, creates loss, has real consequences that make it unsustainable pattern. But your pursuing taught them withdrawal creates space without costing connection, doesn't create loss, has no real consequences because pursuit maintains connection despite withdrawal. The teaching your pursuing provided is what made the pattern continue, made it repeat, made it seem like the right strategy because strategy was working. They got space they needed and kept relationship they wanted. Your pursuing reinforced what you wanted to eliminate, taught them withdrawal was sustainable when you wanted them to learn. Withdrawal was unsustainable. The contradiction between what you wanted them to learn and what your pursuing taught them is why pursuing never created change, was teaching wrong lesson, was reinforcing pattern you wanted eliminated. Only way to teach right lesson is to stop teaching wrong lesson through pursuing. Only way to eliminate pattern is to stop reinforcing pattern through pursuit that makes pattern sustainable. The impossible outcome, what actually happens, when the avoidant can't control the dynamic through your pursuing. When both people maintain no contact, specific outcomes emerge that reveal what your pursuing was preventing and what mutual silence creates. They panic when they realize you're not pursuing. The absence of your usual response creates crisis they weren't prepared for. Days pass, maybe weeks. Their no contact continues. Your no contact continues. They're waiting for your pursuit, waiting for you to reach out, waiting for the pattern to resume where they withdrew and you pursued. But the pursuit doesn't come. The reaching out doesn't happen. The pattern doesn't resume. And the not happening creates panic, creates crisis, creates recognition that something fundamental has changed. You're not pursuing. This has never happened before. Every previous withdrawal was met with your pursuit. This withdrawal is being met with silence, your silence, permanent silence that isn't breaking despite time passing. The panic is recognition that you're actually not pursuing, that this isn't temporary, that something has shifted in you that means the old pattern won't resume. The panic creates specific thoughts. Did I push too far this time? Did I finally lose them? Are they actually done? Is the silence permanent? These thoughts create crisis, create fear, create urgent need to know what's happening. The irony is devastating to them. They created the distance. They initiated the no contact. They withdrew into defended position. And now they're panicking that you're honoring the distance, that you're matching the no contact, that you're not pursuing to close the gap they created. The panic reveals the truth. They didn't actually want permanent distance, wanted temporary space with guaranteed reconnection. Your pursuing always provided the guarantee. Your silence eliminates the guarantee. The elimination creates panic they weren't prepared for because they've never experienced their withdrawal being met with your withdrawal, have always experienced their withdrawal being met with your pursuit. Your silence is creating impossible outcome, them panicking about distance they created. They're forced to pursue if they want contact. reversing the dynamic in ways that reveal who actually needed the relationship more. The panic creates decision point. If they want contact restored, if they want to know you're still there, if they want to verify you haven't actually left, if they want to restore connection, they have to pursue, have to reach out, have to be the one bridging the distance. This requirement reverses the dynamic, reverses it completely. Throughout relationship, you pursued. They decided whether to respond. You reached out. They decided whether to engage. You bridged distance. They decided whether to meet you halfway. You were pursuer. They were responder. But mutual no contact reverses this. If connection is going to be restored, they have to pursue. They have to reach out. They have to bridge. They have to be in the uncomfortable position of pursuing someone who might not respond. The reversal is uncomfortable for them. Uncomfortable because pursuing requires vulnerability, requires admitting they want connection, requires risking rejection. All the things their defended position exists to avoid, but if they want to know whether you're still accessible, they have to pursue, have to put themselves in vulnerable position you were always in. The reversal reveals who needed the relationship more. Throughout the dynamic, it seemed like you needed them more. You were the one pursuing, but the reversal proves opposite. They need you more because they're the ones who can't tolerate the mutual silence. They're the ones panicking. They're the ones forced to pursue if they want silence to end. The reversal of who pursues reveals the truth about who needed whom. You pursuing made it seem like you needed them. Them pursuing reveals they need you. The silence becomes permanent if they don't pursue, and if they do pursue and you maintain your silence, they experience real rejection for first time. Two possible outcomes when they panic about mutual silence. First outcome, they don't pursue, don't reach out, stay in defended position despite panic. If this happens, the silence becomes permanent, becomes real ending, becomes you both having gone no contact, and neither breaking it and relationship ending through mutual silence. This permanence is what they've never experienced before. Is relationship ending not because you gave up, but because both people chose distance? Is loss that can't be blamed on you because you didn't pursue and beg and make relationship continue despite their patterns? Is ending that's mutual, even though they initiated the withdrawal that started it? Second outcome, they do pursue. They break. They reach out. They try to restore contact. And you maintain your silence. You don't respond. You stay no contact despite their pursuing. If this happens, they experience real rejection for first time. Experience you not responding to their reaching out. Experience their pursuit being met with your silence. Experience being on other side of dynamic where they pursue and get nothing in return. The rejection is devastating. Is them experiencing what you experienced every time they didn't respond adequately to your pursuing. Is role reversal that teaches through experience what you experienced repeatedly. Either outcome, permanent silence, or rejected pursuit, is outcome they've never experienced. Is impossible outcome that only occurs when your silence matches their silence. When mutual no contact creates situation where their usual control is eliminated, and either they accept permanent loss or they pursue and experience rejection. Both outcomes teach. Both create crisis. Both are impossible outcomes that only occur when you don't pursue. The uncomfortable mirror turn. If you're maintaining no contact to make them pursue, you're still controlling rather than disengaging. But examine your motivation. Why are you maintaining no contact? Is it because contact doesn't serve your healing? Because you're choosing yourself? Because engaging doesn't align with your boundaries? Or is it because you want to make them panic, want to make them pursue, want to reverse the dynamic to make them feel what you felt? Because if your no contact is about them, about making them panic, about forcing them to pursue, about creating crisis in them, you're not disengaged. You're still controlling, still trying to manage their response, still oriented toward their experience rather than toward your healing. Real no contact is about you, about your choice, about your boundary, about contact not serving your well-being, not about their response to your boundary, not about making them panic or pursue, not about creating outcome in them. If you're maintaining no contact while monitoring whether they're panicking, while waiting to see if they pursue, while tracking their response, you're not truly no contact. You're using no contact as strategy, as manipulation, as control mechanism. Real disengagement means you don't care if they panic. Don't monitor whether they pursue. Don't track their response. You're no contact because contact doesn't serve you, because you're building life that doesn't include them, because engaging would interrupt healing you're prioritizing. Stop using no contact as strategy to control their response. Start using no contact as boundary that protects your healing. Their panic, their pursuing, their response, all of it should be irrelevant to you if you're genuinely choosing yourself. Choose yourself. Maintain no contact for yourself. Stop tracking their response. That's when no contact becomes real boundary instead of continued engagement through strategic silence. What you should do when they break and pursue. Why maintaining your boundary, despite their pursuit, is essential. Understanding how to respond when they break the mutual silence and pursue helps you maintain boundaries that serve you regardless of their panic-driven pursuit. Recognize their pursuit is crisis-driven, not capacity-driven. Panic about loss doesn't equal readiness for reciprocal partnership. They break. They pursue. They reach out after a period of mutual silence. The reaching out feels significant. Feels like breakthrough. Feels like maybe they finally realized. Maybe they finally changed. Maybe the mutual silence created the transformation you've been hoping for. But examine what's driving their pursuit. Is crisis? Is panic? Is desperate response to realizing you might actually be gone? Is fear-driven reaching out, not growth-driven readiness? Crisis creates urgency, creates willingness to do things they wouldn't do in non-crisis state, creates promises, creates vulnerability, creates behavior that looks like change. But crisis-driven change isn't sustainable change. It's temporary response to unbearable situation. Once crisis passes, once they verify you're still accessible, once their panic is relieved, the crisis-driven behavior fades. The promises fade. The vulnerability closes. The patterns return. Because crisis creates motivation. But motivation without sustained work doesn't create capacity, doesn't transform defended position, doesn't heal attachment wounds. Their pursuit driven by panic about losing you doesn't mean they've developed capacity for partnership with you. Means they've hit crisis point where losing you feels unbearable. The unbearable feeling creates pursuit. But feeling doesn't equal capacity. Panic doesn't equal readiness. They're pursuing you doesn't mean they're ready for reciprocal relationship. Means they're having crisis response to potential permanent loss. Recognize crisis for what it is. Don't mistake panic-driven pursuit for transformation-driven readiness. Don't reward panic with access. Maintaining your silence despite their pursuit teaches that patterns have real permanent consequences. They pursue. They reach out. What should you do? Maintain your silence. Don't respond. Don't reward their panic with access. Don't break your boundary because they're finally doing what you always wanted them to do, pursuing. Breaking your boundary to reward their pursuit teaches wrong lesson. teaches, if you panic enough, boundary breaks. If you pursue during crisis, access is restored. If you feel bad enough about loss, loss is reversed. These lessons make the boundary meaningless. Make your no-contact strategy rather than real boundary. Make them learn that your boundaries can be overcome through sufficient panic or pursuit. Maintaining your silence despite their pursuit teaches right lesson. Teaches, boundaries are real. Consequences are permanent. Panic doesn't reverse patterns' costs. Pursuit during crisis doesn't restore what was lost before crisis. The teaching is harsh, is them pursuing and getting nothing, is them experiencing that their reaching out doesn't automatically restore your accessibility, is them learning that you're serious about boundaries in ways you never showed seriousness before because you always softened when they showed even minimal movement toward you. Don't soften. Maintain silence. Let their pursuit meet with your boundary. Let them experience that boundary is real, even when they're pursuing. The experience teaches what your previous softening prevented from being taught. Patterns have permanent consequences that panic doesn't reverse. If you choose to respond, require demonstrated, sustained change first. Not promises, not crisis vulnerability, but evidence of months of therapeutic work. If you're considering responding to their pursuit, if you're thinking maybe their panic is real enough to deserve response, require evidence first. Not promises, not vulnerability during crisis, not words about how they've realized. Require demonstrated sustained change. Require evidence they've been in therapy. Months of therapy with attachment specialist. Not just started therapy when they panicked. Been in therapy doing sustained work. Require evidence of change. Behavioral evidence. Change patterns demonstrated over extended period. Not just change behavior during crisis. Changed behavior that's sustained through multiple contexts. Require proof the change is real transformation, not crisis response. Proof takes time. Takes months of demonstrated, sustained, different behavior. Takes evidence that therapeutic work is creating actual capacity development, not just crisis management. Don't accept promises. Don't accept crisis vulnerability. Don't accept words during panic. Require evidence. Evidence of work, evidence of change, evidence of sustained capacity development. If they've done the work, if they have months of therapy creating real transformation, then considering response might be reasonable. But if they're pursuing during panic without having done sustained work, responding rewards crisis instead of requiring transformation. Maintain boundary, require evidence. Make them prove through sustained, demonstrated change over extended period that pursuit is backed by genuine transformation, not just by panic about loss. The two possible outcomes of mutual no contact and why both serve you better than pursuing ever did. When both people maintain no contact, two outcomes emerge. Understanding both helps you see why mutual silence serves you, regardless of which outcome occurs. Outcome 1. Permanent silence that becomes permanent ending, freeing both people to build separately, without ongoing entanglement. First possible outcome. Neither person breaks the silence. You maintain your no contact. They maintain their no contact. Days become weeks, become months. The silence becomes permanent, becomes real ending, becomes relationship that ended through mutual withdrawal where both people chose distance over connection. This outcome is clean, is clear, is definitive, removes all ambiguity about whether relationship is over. No breadcrumbs, no occasional contact, no friendship maintaining connection, just permanent mutual silence that communicates. This is done. We're both choosing to be done. The ending is mutual even if one person initiated it. The permanence serves you by creating complete separation, necessary for healing, serves you by eliminating ongoing entanglement that previous cycles maintained through your pursuing preventing clean breaks, serves you by freeing you to build without someone attempting to maintain access through occasional contact. The permanent silence is gift of clean ending, gift of complete separation, gift of freedom to move forward without person who patterns were harming you attempting to maintain connection that prevents your healing. First outcome, permanent mutual silence, is good outcome, serves your healing, creates your freedom, provides clean break previous cycles never provided because your pursuing prevented the clean break. Outcome 2, they pursue and you maintain boundary, teaching them the lesson while protecting your healing, regardless of whether they eventually transform. Second possible outcome, they break, they pursue, they can't tolerate the mutual silence, they reach out, and you maintain your boundary. You don't respond, you stay no contact. This outcome is also good, also serves you by teaching them the lesson, by proving boundaries are real, by demonstrating that their pursuit doesn't automatically restore access, by showing them patterns have permanent consequences even when they panic about those consequences. The teaching serves them potentially, might create crisis sufficient to motivate genuine therapeutic work, might drive them to finally address wounds, might result in transformation that serves their future. But the teaching serves you definitely, serves you by proving to yourself you can maintain boundaries even when maintaining is difficult, serves you by demonstrating you're choosing yourself over their crisis, serves you by protecting your healing from being interrupted by their panic-driven pursuit. Whether they use the lesson to transform is their choice. Whether you maintain boundary to protect healing is your choice. Make your choice. Choose your healing. Choose your boundary. Choose protecting yourself from crisis-driven pursuit that isn't backed by demonstrated sustained transformation. Second outcome, them pursuing while you maintain boundary, serves you by teaching them while protecting you. Serves them, potentially, if they use the teaching. Serves you definitely by proving your commitment to yourself. The final truth about when both people go. No contact. The avoidant went no contact. This was familiar. This was their pattern. They withdrew into defended position because closeness triggered wounds, and withdrawal is how they restore safety. You've experienced this before. Multiple times, every previous time you pursued, you reached out, you tried to restore connection. Your pursuing made their withdrawal sustainable, made it safe, made it seem like viable strategy because withdrawal created space without costing relationship. But this time you didn't pursue. This time you also went no contact. You matched their silence with your silence. You met their withdrawal with your maintenance of distance. Both of you simultaneously maintaining no contact for first time in relationship's history. The mutual silence created impossible outcome, created dynamic that never existed before, created situation where they couldn't control outcome through your pursuing because you weren't pursuing, created crisis they weren't prepared for because every previous withdrawal was buffered by your pursuit, preventing the withdrawal from creating real loss. The mutual silence taught lessons, taught them. Withdrawal creates real loss when there's no pursuit buffering the consequences. Patterns have permanent costs when those costs aren't absorbed by partner pursuing. Control they thought they had was always dependent on your choosing to pursue. Taught you. Pursuing was preventing the outcome you wanted, was confirming their narrative, preventing them from missing you, reinforcing pattern you wanted eliminated. Your silence creates what your pursuit prevented, them experiencing consequences, them forced to pursue if they want contact, Them learning patterns cost real, permanent loss. Two outcomes emerge from mutual silence: permanent silence that becomes clean ending, or them pursuing while you maintain boundary that teaches while protecting. Both outcomes serve you better than pursuing ever served you. Both create clean break or clear teaching. Both protect your healing. Both demonstrate your commitment to yourself. Both prove you're choosing yourself over maintaining pattern that was harming you. Whether they use the lesson to transform is their choice. Whether you maintain boundary to protect healing is your choice. Choose yourself. Choose your healing. Choose your boundary. Maintain your no contact, regardless of whether they maintain theirs or break, and pursue. Mutual silence created impossible outcome, them experiencing real consequences. Your continued silence maintains the outcome, them learning lessons, you healing, both people getting what they need, even if only one person recognizes it serves them. They went no contact. You went no contact. The impossible happened. They lost control. They experienced consequences. They panicked or pursued or stayed silent. All outcomes teach. All outcomes serve you if you maintain your boundary. Maintain it, not to control them, to choose yourself, not to make them panic, to protect your healing, not to force them to pursue, to build life that doesn't include them. The mutual silence is gift. Gift they gave through withdrawing. Gift you gave yourself through not pursuing. Gift that keeps giving as long as you maintain the silence that protects your healing. They withdrew. You didn't pursue. Both choices permanent, both appropriate. Only yours determines your future. Choose your silence. Choose your healing. Choose your freedom. That's the impossible outcome. That's what happens when mutual silence creates what pursuit prevented. Them learning, you healing, both happening, both necessary, both permanent. Live in yours completely. Live in yours completely. The specific moments when maintaining your no contact feels most difficult, and why those moments are when it matters most. Understanding when the temptation to break your silence is strongest helps you prepare for those moments and maintain your boundary. When maintaining it is most important. When they pursue with unprecedented vulnerability, showing you parts of themselves you've never seen, making the pursuit feel different from all previous attempts, they reach out. But this reach is different. Shows vulnerability you've never witnessed. Shares things they've never shared. Opens in ways they've never opened. Says things you've spent years wanting to hear. The vulnerability feels real, feels unprecedented, feels like maybe this time is actually different. Maybe the mutual silence created the breakthrough. Maybe the crisis drove them to finally drop defenses in ways nothing else could. The temptation to respond is overwhelming. Is you seeing what you always wanted? Their vulnerability, their openness, their admission of what they feel, and wanting to reward it, wanting to respond to it, wanting to engage with it, because it's what you've been hoping would happen. But pause. Examine what's driving the vulnerability. Is crisis? Is panic about permanent loss? Is desperation to restore access before access becomes permanently unavailable? The vulnerability is real. Crisis does create genuine drops in defenses, but crisis-driven vulnerability isn't sustainable vulnerability. It's temporary state that exists only while crisis exists. Once crisis passes, once they know you're still accessible, once panic is relieved, defenses return. Vulnerability closes. Patterns resume. The unprecedented vulnerability is crisis response, is genuine but temporary, is what panic creates, not what transformation creates. Don't reward crisis vulnerability with access. Recognize it as temporary state. Maintain your boundary. Let the vulnerability exist without responding to it. The maintaining, when vulnerability is most compelling, is when maintaining matters most. Is you proving to yourself that you won't break boundary just because they're finally showing you what you always wanted, if what they're showing is crisis-driven, not transformation-based. When mutual friends pressure you to respond, telling you how much they're suffering, how genuine their regret seems, how you should give them another chance. Mutual friends see the suffering, see them struggling with the mutual silence, see the crisis the loss is creating. The friends reach out to you, tell you how much the avoidant is suffering, how genuine their regret seems, how they've never seen them like this, how maybe you should respond, should give them another chance, should consider that maybe the mutual silence has created the change you wanted. The pressure from friends is compelling. Is external voices validating what part of you wants to believe? That their suffering is transformation, that their crisis is readiness, then maybe you should respond. But friends see suffering, not capacity. See crisis, not transformation. See pain, not sustained work. Friends mean well, but friends aren't qualified to assess whether crisis creates readiness. Friends see surface, the suffering, the regret, the unprecedented vulnerability. Friends don't see beneath surface, whether therapeutic work is occurring, whether patterns are actually changing, whether capacity is developing. Don't let friends' pressure break your boundary. Friends' observations about suffering don't create your obligation to respond. Thank friends for caring. Explain your maintaining boundary for your healing. Ask them to respect your choice. Don't let external pressure override your internal knowing that crisis isn't capacity and suffering isn't readiness. Maintain your boundary. The maintaining when friends are pressuring is when maintaining proves you're choosing yourself over others' opinions about what you should do. When you see evidence they're actually doing therapeutic work, creating temptation to respond, because work is what you always wanted them to do. You learn through some means, through mutual friend, through seeing their social media, through some source, that they're in therapy. Actually, in therapy. Meeting regularly with someone. Doing work. The evidence creates temptation, creates thought. This is what you wanted. This is them doing the work. This is evidence of genuine change, not just crisis response. Maybe you should respond now that they're actually doing what you always needed them to do. But pause again. Examine the timing and the duration. When did therapy start? After the mutual silence created crisis or before? If after, therapy is crisis response. Is them seeking help because losing you became unbearable, not because they recognized need for help while you were present? The distinction matters. Crisis-motivated therapy is different from growth-motivated therapy. One is driven by wanting to restore what was lost. Other is driven by wanting to become a healthier person, regardless of relationship outcome. Also examine duration. How long have they been in therapy? Weeks? Months? Years? Change takes time. Real sustainable transformation requires sustained work over extended period, months, minimum, often years. If they've been in therapy for a few weeks since panic set in, that's not sufficient duration to prove transformation is occurring. That's just evidence they started process. Process takes much longer than few weeks to create actual capacity development. Don't respond just because they started therapy. Require sustained, demonstrated work. Require months of therapy creating behavioral changes that are evident through their actions, not just through their claims. Require transformation proven over time, not just therapy started in crisis. If they do sustained work, if months or years pass with evidence of genuine transformation, then considering response might be reasonable. but don't respond just because therapy started. Maintain boundary until sustained transformation is demonstrated over sufficient time period to prove change is real and sustainable. And